Hey y'all, who dat and what is up? I am Jeff Nowak, and this is a preview edition of Inside Black and Gold. We are getting ready for week 2. 49ers 1-0 at Saints 0-1. And you know what? Injuries. As it always seems to be for the Saints, injuries are going to be a major part of the equation. But for once, it does seem like they've ended up on the right side of it, at least as far as it seems for now. So we're going to get through a lot of that. This is going to be kind of our standard preview episode. This is obviously going to be the cold open here. Then in the first segment, I'm going to run through the injury report as we have it right now, as I sit here at about 5:00 on Thursday. Still don't have the updated 49ers injury report, which is frustrating, but I just can't wait any longer. Do have the Saints injury report. So we will go through that at length. Got some information about Taliese Fuaga's injury, so we'll talk through that, kind of what our expectations are there. How concerned are we really for that injury? Going to check in on Chase Young, all these other guys. So we're going to talk about that. Want to hear from Deuce McAllister, his take on the game. Also heard from Brandon Staley on Jonas Sanker. So I want to hear what he had to say on the rookie who's going to be thrown into the fire this week. After that, we're going to chat with Evan Giddings, who's a 49ers reporter, give us the lowdown on what's going on in San Fran land. And then finally, going to break down all of our X factors as we do on this Friday podcast. Going to bring in Steve Geller for the second and third segments, all that good stuff. Again, Jeff Nowak, Inside Black and Gold. I think this is the week. The Saints get their win. How many of these weeks are there going to be? I don't know, but I think this is the week. I think it is. Stick with me. We're going to go through it. We're going to get it. We're going to get it done. Have some faith. All right. Who dat? Go Saints. Stick around. We'll be right back. And we're back on Inside Black and Gold. Jeff Nowak here coming at you solo, but only for this segment. We're going to bring in Steve Geller in the next segment. Also, Evan Giddings, who's a 49ers reporter, to break down what's going on with San Francisco. And then finally, we're going to do the X Factors on the back end of the show. But here, as we do, we're going to break down the latest on the injuries. This is not the final form of the injury report. Still don't have an updated 49ers injury report. It's going to come in right as we finish the show, which is really frustrating, but it's not something that we're necessarily waiting on because we already know that Brock Purdy has turf toe. That's reported from Ian Rappaport earlier today, and he's going to be out at least 2 weeks, probably longer. Anytime you're dealing with turf toe, it's an injury that I wish they would rename because it's a lot more significant than the name makes it sound. Anyone who's had turf toe will tell you it's not something that you're going to be playing with anytime soon, right? Especially based on the severity of it. Could be 4 weeks, could be 8 weeks, could be a season. It's always going to be a tough one. So the Saints will face Mac Jones. Now, if you remember, the last time the Saints faced Mac Jones, they did pretty well. It was a 34-0 shutout over in New England. I think it was kind of the end for Mac Jones. Like that was kind of where you saw, we're cutting this short. And that wasn't a particularly good Saints team that shut this Patriots out at home. So it tells you just how things were going for Mac Jones. But he's in San Francisco now. He's with a guy in Kyle Shanahan that probably wishes he drafted Mac Jones over Trey Lance and number 2 overall. It doesn't really matter because they drafted Brock Purdy, but Brock Purdy's not going to play. You're also not going to see George Kittle. He's on IR. There's a bunch of other names on this list. We don't need to go through them all. It's going to be one we just watch and see on game day who's active, who's not. But let's go through the Saints half of the injury report. Going to pop that up to my left here. And, it's a reasonably short list, right? Like you're never going to have an injury report with no names on it. But this is about as economical as you could hope to be throughout an NFL season. You have 7 names on here. One of them is Julian Blackmon, a DMP. He's done for the year. He's having shoulder surgery. He's not coming back. And we found out on Wednesday that Jonas Sanker is at least going to get the first run at replacing him. I don't know what his snap count is going to be. I think they're going to rotate, but it's going to be Jonas. So let's hear what Saints defensive coordinator Brandon Staley had to say when he was asked about the confidence level in Jonas and why he's earned this opportunity.
Just think he got a lot better from spring to the end of training camp. There was a really big jump, I think, really in the last 2 preseason games. And then the way he competed against our ones at times during training camp. So you're never truly ready as a rookie. You just got to go trust that they're going to go out there and play the right way, which is what he's done. When he's gone out there, he's played the right way. There's going to be some things that happen out there for the first time for him. Certainly going to be a challenge for him against this offense, but that's the only way you get better. And so we're not afraid of playing young guys, and I know that he'll maximize his opportunity.
Yeah, and I appreciate that answer because it's honest, right? And I say this all the time. There's no such thing as a rookie who's ready to play week 1, who's ready to play week 2, who's ready to play, honestly, probably the first month, 2 months of the season, right? Like, there are rookies who can get it done. That doesn't mean they're ready. It just means that they're going to play. And I think Jonas is in that situation. Now, you can kind of flatten that learning curve by throwing a guy into the fire and seeing what happens and letting him take his lumps. But do not fool yourself into thinking there will be no lumps taken. It's going to happen. What the Saints have to make sure they do is ensure that those lumps, as they're being given out, are not costing you games, right? So that's going to be the big question for Jonas, but still pretty cool for him to be thrown in there. It's a show of 2 things. 1, some significant confidence in Jonas Sinker. 2, kind of tells you where this team is on Jordan Howden, because you would look at him and you'd think, oh, that's got to be the guy, right? He's in year 4 with the Saints, right? Like, there should be some built-in trust. Nah, not this time. But it is what it is. Okay, moving on. Trevor Penning, still absent with the toe issue. He ain't playing. We don't have game day designations yet, but I'm going to sit here and tell you, you're not bringing Trevor Penning back on a Friday after missing a month plus and then being like, send him out there, he's ready to go. No. I mean, it would be great if he got back on Friday. I highly doubt that he will, but he got to get that guy through some practices before you could feasibly throw him out there. So he's not playing on Sunday, which means he's missed a good chunk of time with the turf toe. And, you know, you're getting close to the range of like, man, you should just put him on IR if he's going to miss the first month of the season. So I'd have to imagine their goal is to get him out there prior to week 5. So we'll have to see, but not looking good for this week. The other guy who hasn't been in practice, Chase Young. And this is why, you know, you hear a coach being like, it's minor, don't worry about it. Clearly not. Clearly it wasn't that minor. It was a significant calf issue. If he's going to miss 2 weeks for it, and we'll see. Like, I think Chase is in a different situation from Trevor just because he got through camp. I think it's feasible that he gets out there on Friday and practices and plays in the game, but I'd probably put it at 25%, 30%. Because, I mean, if he's not able to get out there today, on Thursday, what's different on Friday? What's different on Sunday? So I would guess the target is week 3 for a return, but we'll have to wait and see. This may be a situation where, hey, we can get it done without you this week against Mac Jones. Like, this is not a situation we need you to push it. But, man, you paid that guy. He looked great in the preseason, and missing the first 2 weeks of your new fancy contract. Not exactly a great look. Either way, let's go through the rest of the list. We'll leave Taliese Fuaga for last because I have a lot to say about that. We have running back Velus Jones Jr. He has a knee issue. He was limited the first 2 days. That'll be one to watch. Safety Jordan Howden is full. He's dealing with an oblique injury that he suffered late in camp. And then the one that's a little concerning is Zach Wood, who is limited with an elbow injury. Now, we don't know which elbow it is, and that's significant because you're talking about a long snapper. So is it your right elbow or your left elbow? Because if you have an elbow injury to your left arm, that's not the ball you snap with. So it probably wouldn't be that big of an issue. If you have an elbow injury to your right arm and it affects your snapping, then you start to ask a question. And who knows? Like, it's tough to say. And the issue with that is that the long snapper position is so specialized, right? Like, it's not like everyone it's not like you just have another guy and be like, go in there and long snap. Now, the Saints have a few other guys on the roster, as Phil Galliano pointed out. The funny thing is Taysom Hill would be the backup long snapper, the emergency long snapper. He's done it. Like, that's always been the case. He's the backup long snapper. He's the backup holder. He's the backup just about anything. But he's on PUP. So he can't go out there and even do that. But there are a few guys. Phil pointed to Cedric Wilson, Nephi Sewell, and Mo, which I learned today is short for Maliki Madavau. All of those guys have long snapping experience. I don't want to go into a game with Cedric Wilson as my long snapper. So I think if there's a chance that Zach Woods' injury is an issue, we'll see them signing a long snapper. Until they do that, I don't think it's I imagine it's just something that you're managing right now. But you don't want to mess around with, like, if suddenly when you don't have a long snapper you can trust and you have to go kick a game-winning field goal, like, that operation is really important. You start snapping the ball over people's heads and you can't kick a field goal or an extra point when you need it. That changes games. So that's going to be one to watch. But the biggest injury is the one we've been talking about all week, and it's Taliese Fuaga. He's dealing with a knee injury. We knew that. It goes back to the Superdome practice. If you recall, he came out of that practice with a minor knee issue. Minor knee issue is what they called it. Missed the next day. We didn't really hear about it again. He did not appear on the injury report going into the game. But during the game, clearly something happened. He exacerbated that injury, and it clearly affected him throughout the course of the game. He was not playing well, and you put Awesome Richards in there, and Awesome Richards was a better option because the way Tally was playing was not as capable of being a starting right tackle. That's not me talking down on the guy. That's just the reality. He was not playing well, and the injury was limiting him to the point that he was not a net positive out there. And so, okay, what is the injury? Well, Matt Paris at NOLA.com was able to chat with Tally yesterday. He reported that it's an inflamed patella tendon. It's in his left leg, based on that's the leg he had the wrap on during the game as he sat on the bench. And that's significant because he's the right tackle now. So which leg are you using for your kick step? Which leg are you using to put all that pressure on for your kick step? It's your left leg. It's your left knee. So if you don't know what a patella tendon is, it is basically the tendon that connects the bottom of your kneecap to your shin bone, right? And when it's working, you never think about it. When it's a problem, it's always a problem. And I'm going to say right now, you don't want to mess with tendons, right? Like, you hear about guys like, he sprained a knee. He's pulled a muscle. He did whatever. Like, these are injuries that you let heal and you come back and you're fine. You rupture a tendon, you're losing a full year of your career, if not more. You might never be the same if you rupture a tendon, whether that's your Achilles tendon, whether that's your patella tendon. Like, those things don't just come back, right? You're talking extensive surgery, long rehab, career-altering type injury. So you got to take it seriously. Got to be careful with it. And, in that report, Tally said, hey, I'm going to come up with a program. The thing is, with this type of injury, and I've had patella tendon issues. I know what it feels like. I don't know exactly what he's going through, but I do know when it happened to me, like, I would jog around and I'd be like, all right, I'm good. I can go back in. Like, I was playing soccer at the time when I was getting hurt. And, I felt good. And I went in. And then all of a sudden I needed to plant. I needed to move, like, off schedule. Like, I had to react. Suddenly pain, lost all the strength in that knee, and I was done again. And so I can imagine, you was like, why was he unable to play at a high level? Well, if that's happening to you in the course of an NFL game, you got like a 240-pound defensive end coming at you. You're a 300-pound guy, so the weight, the force you're putting on that knee is already immense. And yeah, I can understand completely why that would be an issue. But at the end of the day, my thing is, I'm not a doctor. I don't know what the severity of his injury is, but I do know that tendinitis, which is essentially what this is a repetitive use injury. You can ice it, you can treat it. I'm sure he's going to get treatment for it regularly, but the best treatment you can have for a repetitive use injury is to stop whatever you're doing repetitively and giving it time. And so that's the question the Saints are going to have. And I'm sure Tali is going to push to play, and they're going to have to decide, hey, are we better off getting this as close to right as we can now and have him miss a game, miss 2 games, or have him push through it and risk this being something that lingers all year and affects him, and worst case scenario becomes something significantly worse. So, I've been asked a few times, how concerned are you with this injury? I'm very concerned with this injury. And the Saints have to be very smart with how they handle it, because it's not just about week 2. It is about, this is the guy that you're hoping can be your cornerstone right tackle for the next decade. So you got to be careful, right? Like, you got to figure this out. We just saw Ryan Ramczyk's career end after 7 seasons, 8 seasons, because of degenerative knee issues, right? And so you don't want to be thinking about like, oh, he might retire in 8 years, but you do need to be thinking about like, okay, what's the best thing to do right now for this player? And maybe it's playing week 2, maybe it's not playing week 2, but that's the question they're going to have to answer, and we'll have to see, because here's the other part. If he's not able to go out there and play at a high enough level, I don't want him out there anyway, right? And maybe you end up in a situation where, no, you don't want to send him out there, but you will have him active in an emergency situation. I could see them doing that, and people would freak the hell out, but it would give you, because here's the thing, I don't know who your backup tackle is. So if Austin Richards goes down and you have Tally down, who plays? I don't know, but we'll have to see. And Tally's a tough guy. Like, I watched him play through a lot last year. There was one game that he had tweaked his back and it just wasn't working, and he had a heat wrap on the entire game. He never sat down, but he never even looked like he considered coming out. Like, he's that type of player, and that's the type of player you want. But sometimes it's the type of player you also have to protect from himself. So we'll have to see. But either way, Tally was back at practice today, so that's a good sign. And we'll find out tomorrow what his status will be. I'd guess questionable, but we'll have to wait and see. Either way, that's the injury report. And the good news is that the Saints injury report is a lot shorter than the 49ers. Now, a guy like Christian McCaffrey, emphasis on the calf, as Cam put it, he's dealing with a calf injury. He didn't participate on Wednesday, but he's going to go. Jawan Jennings, he's dealing with a shoulder injury. He didn't participate on Wednesday, but sounds like he's going to go. So they have a lot of guys that, they're dealing with stuff, but they're going to play. And I think the Saints are going to find a way to deal with Mac Jones. But let's hear from Deuce McAllister on how he feels about this matchup, how he feels about facing Mac Jones instead of Brock Purdy, instead of George Kittle, instead of whatever. Let's hear from Deuce.
This game was already interesting, but I thought that it was going to be one where the Saints almost had to play perfect. And not to say that they're not going to have to play almost perfect, but this game may be a lot more winnable than previously thought, when you look at the schedule originally.
Yeah, Deuce, because of the fact, no matter what, okay, this next man up, okay, I never believed that. But, okay, it's great for the coaches to tell other players that, and they tell it to the media, and people repeat it. But the next guy, he ain't as good. That's bottom line. If he was as good or better, he'd be playing. He's watching. And with Mac Jones, we've seen the wild ride with him after really piecing it together. His final season at Alabama, he becomes a first-round pick, showed so much promise as a rookie. And then, Deuce, man, it's been a Mount Everest drop-off for him.
Been a Mount Everest drop-off for him, and, even when you had Brock Purdy as a quarterback, not having Kittle takes away a little bit. But now you're going to have a backup quarterback and not have him. Now, the wild card, and he will always be a wild card, is Christian McCaffrey. But if I am the Saints, I am treating Christian McCaffrey like teams treat Alvin himself, and Alvin Kamara. And basically by that, I'm putting 8 in the box. And whenever he goes out, I have a man underneath. I have a safety over the top, and you're going to have to throw it to somewhere else. And it won't be your tight end, your blanket for you. You're going to either have to give it to one or two of the receivers that we're either bringing back or that is playing hurt, or it's going to be somebody else. And so no job is ever easy. But for this defense, it has to be to key in on Christian McCaffrey and not allow him to just be able to be Superman and beat you. And so you've got a lot, if you're the Saints, working in your favor, because now I have a quarterback that's going on the road. He's making not his first start, but with his first start, with that team and not having a lot of the weapons that he would normally have. I think that you will see somewhat of a condensed playbook, but they'll still run their plays. But, it's basically going to be the Saints defensively and the fans, they can make it really, really hard, just to be able to be effective. And, offensively, you've got to figure out a way to put some points on the board. I mean, because you're going to get any and everything from them defensively, knowing that they can't really give you a lot because their margin has shrunk so much defensively, because they don't have the weapons on the other side of the ball.
Yeah, and I wholeheartedly agree. Like, this has now become a game that whatever the betting line says, like, I just agree with it completely. The Saints should be favored in this game if you're going against Mac Jones. And this has now become one of the most winnable games of your season. So you got to go do it. And your plan's got to be the plan. We asked a few guys, we asked Brandon Staley, asked DeMario, like, does it change your preparation? And they'll say no, but it has to. And the biggest reason it changes your preparation is Mac Jones isn't going to run around the way Brock Purdy was going to run around. The way Brock Purdy won that game for them last week, which was just kind of scrambling, extending, and finding Jake Tongas, a guy I'd never even heard of before that play, in the end zone for a touchdown. So, it's funny because this is the type of matchup that in the old 4-3 scheme, I would have been like, man, this sets up perfectly. And now it's like, I wonder how the 3-4 is going to adjust for a pocket-bound quarterback. But that's a problem I'm happy to have, not having to deal with Kyler Murray or whoever, Josh Allen, scrambling around and making my life miserable. We'll see if Michael McCorkle-Jones can get that done. But that's going to wrap up this segment on Inside Black and Gold. I'm Jeff Nowak, coming at you solo here, but we will be bringing on Steve Geller in the next segment. Also, Evan Giddings, 49ers reporter, as we break down what's going on in San Fran land, all that good stuff. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that. Otherwise, stick around. We'll be right back. And we are back on Inside Black and Gold, another preview edition, getting ready for week 2. 49ers 1-0 at the Saints 0-1, probably what you predicted, but it's going to look a lot different than you probably expected. I'm Jeff Nowak alongside Steve Geller as always, and we're bringing in, yes, Evan Giddings, 49ers pregame host for 95.7 The Game, also hosts 49ers podcast on the Believe Podcast Network. Evan, I know it's kind of, there may be like a triage unit out there. I don't know if they're, called in the Red Cross to handle some of these injuries. But what's the mood out in 49ers land right now?
Here we go again. It's kind of strange that each and every year outside of 2023, this has been a top 10 injured unit of football. Now, fortunately, they've been able to sustain and thrive under a lot of these conditions. The only years where they've missed the playoffs are literally when they've been the number one injured team by games missed in the NFL. So Kyle Shanahan has shown an ability to overcome a lot of these injuries. However, his quarterback's kind of a different story. And so I think this is going to be a much more intriguing and probably closer matchup than a lot of people had it penciled on paper prior to the Brock Purdy news.
Yeah, and just kind of go, okay, so Mac Jones, obviously it's his first year there. He's the backup. Like, what's the confidence level in Mac? We've seen him back when he was with the Patriots. The Saints shut him out in that game. It was 35-0. They probably feel pretty good about seeing him again. But, what is kind of the confidence level in Mac right now?
Well, I think that the reason why Mac Jones was such a good fit for the Niners, and not just because Kyle Shanahan ostensibly wanted him back in 2021, but I think that he is a similar quarterback to Brock Purdy outside of every area but his athleticism. Like, he knows where to go with the ball. He makes sound decisions generally with the ball. But the one thing he can't do is extend plays. The one thing he cannot do is use his legs, much in the way you saw Brock Purdy did to win the game in Seattle in week 1. So a lot of people might be looking at this week and saying, well, he runs a similar system. Mac Jones is, a sound playmaker, a sound signal caller. But I do think there's going to be a significant drop-off. And that's the reason why Brock Purdy is a $50 million quarterback and Mac Jones is on his third team.
Looking at the injury list coming out yesterday, you see the getting Veterans Day of rest already, but the most notable that everyone's curious about is obviously Christian McCaffrey, also listed with that calf issue. Just wondering how serious that is for him. It's been, I know, a nagging issue all along.
Yeah, I mean, not serious enough to not give him the ball 31 times. I mean, it was
I hear that, right.
He looked just exactly the way he did in 2023. Maybe a little less burst on the ground, but this offensive line is also not as good as I believe it was 2 years ago. And I think the biggest decline, oddly enough, on the offensive line, considering what level they're generally at, is probably from Trent Williams, number 71. He's their Hall of Famer, and he is, when he's healthy, first-team All-Pro, probably best left tackle in football, is certainly one of them. He allowed 6 pressures on Sunday in Seattle. He did not have a good game by Trent Williams standards, and he got rolled up on midway through the second quarter. That might have affected him, but I seriously think that impacted the running game. So I thought Christian McCaffrey looked the exact same he did 2 years ago. The difference is, can they continue to use him like that and not basically get him hurt? Because that calf is right now what I feel like a lot of 49ers fans are feeling like this season and this team is resting on while Brock Purdy's out.
Yeah, and obviously last year with Christian, like the calf was the story of the year. Like it just never went away. And you always Chase Young's dealing with a calf injury right now. And anytime you hear that, it's like, all right, when's that Achilles going to pop up, right? Like it just, you got to be careful with him. Because, we saw it with Aaron Rodgers, right? Like he was dealing with a calf injury his first year with the Jets, like all training camp. And then he goes out there and it's like, well, there it goes. So, it's anytime I see calf, I immediately my hackles go up. But, the other guy who's definitely not going to play, and we know he's not going to play for at least 4 weeks is George Kittle. Christian McCaffrey is Christian McCaffrey. He's going to do Christian McCaffrey things. He becomes a lot easier to defend when you don't have to deal with George Kittle. And that's in both the run game and the pass game, because George has always been kind of the standard bearer of what's a complete tight end look like in terms of a guy who can go out there and block and receive at the top end. It's George Kittle. How do they, I don't know if you can replace him, but how do they go about replacing him with the guys on the roster?
Yeah, I mean, I think that part makes Mac Jones's job a lot more difficult and is going to underline a lot of the problems that the Niners offense may face against the Saints on Sunday. And the reason is they don't run a whole lot of 2 tight end sets. And so basically with George Kittle on the field, I think the biggest impact for me he has is he doesn't tip the hand of Kyle Shanahan. And what I mean by that is you can run or pass when he has his hand in the dirt, whether he's inline, outside, tight end. You can put him anywhere on that tight end spot, and you can throw out of it, you can run out of it, and you don't know how to necessarily defend him because he does both so well. So this is a Niners team that I think might utilize a bit more 2 tight end sense as to not, again, tip their hands. When Luke Farrell was in the game on Sunday against Seattle, he did have a big 4th down catch, but for the most part, they were going to line it up and run it at you. When Jake Tonjes was in the game, though he didn't have a catch in his NFL career until the 4th quarter of that game, he's more of a pass-catching tight end. And so I think that on that last drive, you saw that, all right, when Farrell's in there running it, when Tonjes in there throwing it, that's something that every defense now has on tape, including the Saints, and they're going to be able to key in on. And I have to imagine that Dennis Allen is going to the Saints DC, who I've been assuming for the longest time has always been Dennis Allen, is now gone, is going to be able to take advantage of that.
Hey, he's your old buddy. It's Brandon Staley. He was out there with y'all last year. Come on.
I know. And I grew up a Chargers fan, in fact, so I'm very familiar with who Brandon Staley is.
We also have Ike. We also have Ike Adam, who was out there with y'all last year, too. So, yeah, I guess my question, so the tight ends, Kyle Juszczyk, he's a fullback, but as far as fullbacks go, he's one of the more effective kind of pass-catching fullbacks you'll see. Is he a part of that? I feel like his utilization has to go up with Kittle out, right?
Yeah, his snap count was, I want to say, close to 70% of snaps on Sunday,
Wow.
But they were pretty equally split. So sometimes he was lined up at fullback, sometimes he was lined up as the inline tight end, sometimes he was lined up as the outline tight end, and he had 2 catches in the game. He was actually their 3rd leading receiver on Sunday. So Kyle Juszczyk is probably going to be a part of this game plan. I wouldn't expect him to get 5 to 7 targets, because that's generally not how Kyle Shanahan uses him. But he might be involved in the running game. I just feel like he's somebody that Kyle Shanahan always has trust in to do whatever job is required of him. And again, when they've been at their best, he's a part of this group. Kittle's a part of that group. McCaffrey is, Juszczyk. Formerly, when Debo was on the team, this sort of chameleon-like offense where you don't have a clue of what they're going to be able to do. So at the very least, they do have 2 of those players still left. I just feel like missing Kittle and obviously Deebo Samuel, who's now with Washington, it's just going to make the job a lot harder for Shanahan to call plays.
Looking at that wide receiver group, we're harping on this offense right now, but who really is available for this team? I know Ayuk's out, and Juwan Jennings is dealing with an injury as well. We got to worry about Ricky Pearsall. That's what I know. He had a big game last week.
Yeah, Ricky Pearsall, I thought he looked really good, and he was essentially set up to be the number one wide receiver this offseason. The only thing that's held him back has been staying on the field. He's dealt with offseason injuries. Obviously, before last season, he was shot, which wasn't his fault. He's had some soft tissue stuff this training camp, but I thought he looked awesome. A big double move on that last drive to get open for a 45-yard catch. He had an earlier 26-yard in-breaking route on a 3rd and 6 to extend that first drive, which led eventually to a touchdown. Ricky Pearsall was drafted to be the number one receiver for the Niners and kind of the heir apparent in a different skill set to Deebo Samuel. And with Brandon Ayuk tearing his ACL last year, his timeline was expedited. So I think that they're very impressed with what they've seen so far from Ricky Pearsall. And he's going to be the number one target for Mac Jones out there, if not by any virtue of the fact that they don't have many people to throw the ball to at this point.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to make light of this, but it is crazy to look at this offensive roster and see two guys who have been shot since joining the NFL, and Ricky Pearsall and Brian Robinson. That's just, I don't think they're collecting players with that, on their resume, but it's just kind of wild to see.
They're tough.
Right, maybe
they can take a bullet.
They're not going to have any worse injury than that. But anyway, switching sides a little bit. What I think the story of this game is going to be low scoring, and I think if whichever defense finds a way to steal a possession and maybe even score or set up a short field, that could be the difference in the game. I mean, like, whoever scores 13 wins, in my opinion. Like, I think that's kind of the number I look at. And it's funny because it was the number the last time the Saints played the 49ers. They won 12-0. It was a shutout. The Saints couldn't score 13 points. If they could, they would have won the game. So I guess, what is your read on the defense? Robert Saleh is back. Nick Bosa, to me, looks like he's playing like the old Nick Bosa, before the injury. So what is kind of the strength of this group, and how do you see that playing out?
Yeah, I completely agree. If the Niners win it, it's going to be won by their defense. And the reason is Robert Saleh very quickly has gotten a group in which there are at times 4 or 5 rookies on the field together to play like they're not rookies. And that was my biggest concern coming into this season. I thought the offense, though they've obviously run into injuries, was going to be able to keep them at a certain floor. But the defense, with basically 3 rookies on the defensive line, either starting or rotating in, 2 rookies at times in the secondary at the safety positions, either starting or rotating in, a rookie nickel corner, and sometimes potentially this Sunday you're going to see a rookie linebacker if Nick Martin is available. So this is a very, very young defense, which breeds inconsistency. Sometimes you're going to see players out of position. There was not much of that at all on Sunday, combined with the fact that the 3 playmakers at every single level were basically what their salaries have paid them to be. That's Nick Bosa, like you mentioned, Fred Warner, and then Diamador Lenore, who's their number 1 corner they paid last season. He was targeted, I believe, 7 times, didn't allow a catch on Sunday against Seattle. So Robert Saleh made their stars look like stars and their rookies look like 2nd or 3rd year players. And that, to me, is going to be the path to victory for the 49ers, how they are able to neutralize the Saints and keep it a low-scoring game for Mac Jones and company.
You mentioned Fred Warner. I feel like, football people know the name, maybe doesn't get enough respect around in the NFL, but that's a guy that just a super stud, doesn't even miss any time. I feel like someone you don't have to worry about getting on the injury report. Just what has he meant to this defense, being that stout, consistent presence?
Yeah, in a way, I know last year sucked for the Niners and for a lot of their fans watching, but in a way last year I probably gained more respect for Fred Warner than any other season. And the reason was, after week 4 against New England, he played the entire year with a broken ankle. I mean, that's just gladiator stuff. And he was, while he wasn't at the level that, I think people are accustomed to seeing him, he was still really damn good. In some games, I remember, Sunday night game versus Dallas, like you couldn't tell whether or not Fred Warner was playing on that broken digit. And so, there's all these sort of stories, too, that you'll hear coming out of camp and from locker rooms. Like I remember one time after a game last year, I think it was after they lost to the Chiefs, and it was in the locker room, and Fred Warner just had his arm around Nick Bosa. And this is the highest paid non-quarterback in the league at this point. And Fred Warner is in his corner, in his ear, hyping him up, telling him what he needs to be, what he needs to do, and just encouraging him after a tough loss. Like, that's the kind of leadership that Fred Warner brings, in addition to obviously being the number one middle linebacker in football. I just don't think you can put a price on that sort of duality, the adding to the physical part, but also the psychological aspect of the team. So Fred Warner's been one of my favorite players, certainly to cover in my short time covering the Niners. And I think he's obviously one of the best players to watch on defense in the NFL.
Yeah, my favorite name on the 49ers defense is Upton Stout. Sounds like a Renaissance author. Sounds like, hanging out with like Ernest Hemingway and, drinking whiskey out the bottle, stuff like that. But I do want to talk about the specialists. I don't know if I've ever seen a team actively turn on their kicker like the 49ers did last week, and Jake Moody just did not have it. And it's crazy to think he's a 3rd-round pick. I mean, it's rare to see a kicker drafted, and you draft a guy in the 3rd round, like you're anticipating he's going to be a star for you, at least as much as a kicker can be, and he's gone. It's Eddie Pinheiro now, and then also Thomas Morstead coming back to the Superdome for the first time since the Saints cut him kind of, unceremoniously during COVID in 2020. We haven't had a stable punter since he left. What's the kind of confidence level in a game like this, right? Field goals could be the difference. How are you feeling about that?
Yeah, they probably will be. I mean, 3 points between these two teams might be a touchdown. I mean, I think they had to make this move. Like, Jake Moody was somebody that, God love him. It's like Robert Aguayo all over again. I know you guys are very familiar with this story. And he was actually taken in the 2nd round, but he just couldn't kick. It's a blunt kind of position, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news for a lot of people who think that kickers are part of the football team, but you're not a teammate unless you're doing your job. And people all over who have played in this league have spoken about this, that kickers are just off to the side. They're expected to come out, be seen, not heard, like children back in the 1960s. And the fact is, Jake Moody was not one of those guys that could get it done. So I thought the fact that the Niners coming into this year were giving him the inroad to the starting position, they didn't really bring in any competition, despite the fact that he changed his kicking motion. That's like, a starting pitcher who throws overhand suddenly becoming a submarine guy. Like, what's going on? So the fact that he missed a kick from 27 yards in the first game, this Niners team had to make a move, was not that big of a shock to me. And they bring in the guy, Eddie Pinheiro, who's worked the special teams coordinator in the past. He's a career, I think, 80% field goal kicker, as opposed to Jake Moody, who was under 75. We'll see. I still don't have the greatest amount of confidence, but certainly have more than I did in Jake Moody.
Yeah, it's one of those positions that when it's good, it's like, all right, this is how it's supposed to be. And then when it's bad, it's like, what the hell? Like, get this sorted out. And just Thomas, how has Thomas been since he's been with you?
Oh, I mean, from everything I've seen, he looks great. It's again, not a unit that I think you give much. You don't give a lot of interest or notability to the special teams unit unless things are going wrong. And Morstead has not been a guy that you've heard about a lot, which means he's doing well. So this is a guy that week 1 he had a couple punts inside the 20. I think most of the attention obviously was on Moody and the rest of the field goal kicking unit. But everything that I have read or heard about from camp, he seems to be a great guy.
We talked about the McCaffreys, the Warners. What are maybe a name or two of some of the lesser known players that could be an X factor in this matchup against the Saints Sunday?
I think most of those guys are on defense, and your boy Upton Stout, I thought he looked really good on Sunday. He was targeted a lot. I mean, look, opposing teams are going to go after rookies. They're going to test them. They're going to see if they're up for the challenge. And Upton Stout, I think he had one holding call, and it was early. And after that, I thought he was solid. He made a big play on a pass breakup on the final drive, basically sticking in zone coverage with Jackson Smith-Njigba, who's a pretty damn good receiver for the Seahawks. I thought he looked good. Marcus Siegel, who played every single snap after being a 5th-round pick this year as a rookie, had a fumble recovery, right place, right time, really impressed in preseason. So I would say those two players in the secondary are certainly ones to keep your eye on. And on offense, really the only guy that I think this week sort of might get a bit of an uptick is going to be Brian Robinson. I know he's not a young guy or a fresh face, but people know who he is from Washington. But I think that you cannot give the ball to Christian McCaffrey 31 times a game and expect him to stay upright. I also expect this game to be shrunk a little bit in terms of time of possession. Niners had it for like 38 minutes, so McCaffrey was on the field a lot. But I think they are going to use Brian Robinson Jr. a lot more this week.
Yeah, my last question, and it's always kind of weird when you have a guy who's been to multiple Super Bowls and then it's just like it kind of falls off. And how is kind of the prevailing winds around Kyle Shanahan at this point? It's funny because every 2 years or so it seems like one of his coordinators gets picked off for a head coach job, and it seems like been able to stay consistent. But the injuries just make it really hard to get an evaluation. And I just don't like. We saw that with Dennis Allen last year. It was like there was a ton of injuries. They still moved on. It can get bad enough. So I'm just curious, like, where are things with Kyle at this point?
I think people still have a lot of confidence in Kyle Shanahan. I don't know about confidence in him to win the big game, but certainly confidence in him to get the most out of his roster. Last year and 2020 are the 2 years in which, again, he got hit by more injuries than any team in the NFL. And those are the only 2 years that prior to sort of the rebuilding part of this process that he's missed the playoffs, and the only 2 years that he hasn't gone to the NFC Championship game. Like, that's the other part about this too, is that when Kyle gets to the playoffs, Shanahan teams win. Now, they haven't won a Super Bowl yet, which has prevented a lot of fans from saying that this guy is the genius that they were promised. But I think that Kyle Shanahan is someone that keeps you at a floor that not many head coaches do in the NFL. Yeah. Now, the one thing that is a bit of a wrinkle in all of this is when he doesn't have a quarterback that he trusts or that has capabilities to do a job, he does struggle. I believe with Jimmy Garoppolo and Brock Purdy, his record is 61-30, so a 67 winning percentage. Wow. Without those two quarterbacks, he is 9-32, and I believe 5 of those wins are from Nick Mullins. So without basically his starting quarterback, Kyle Shanahan has not been able to find a way to win many games. And that's understandable. You don't have your starting quarterback, but that's what leads me to feel uneasy about this game on Sunday is the track record, despite Mac Jones, I think, being more talented than, the Brian Hoyers and even the Mullinses of the world. It's just going to be an uphill battle when you're not facing a team at full strength. And Kyle Shanahan in the past has struggled in these spots. So the confidence level in him is high. I'm just not sure if it's going to be enough, even against the Saints, to get over the top.
Yeah, and I mean, all the reports were that the 49ers wanted Mac Jones back when for the Trey Lance pick. So maybe this is a guy that he can work with. We'll see. But Evan Giddings, 49ers pregame host for 95.7 The Game, also hosts the 49ers podcast on the Believe Podcast Network. Evan, I appreciate the time. So great insight. Thanks so much, man.
Anytime, guys. Enjoy the game.
Appreciate you, man.
But yeah, thanks again to Evan Giddings. Great insight, and I think it's. I don't know what to expect from this game. It's so difficult. Like, I'm predicting the Saints win. They're still underdogs on the betting line. I think you hammer that.
That's been crazy. You seeing that just number drop so significantly throughout this week now. It's all the way down to 3.5 from being at 7.5.
It was always too high. 7.5. Like there's going to be a point where the betting lines, like the Saints are going to cover these spreads, right? They didn't cover it in week 1. They should have,
right.
If Blake Grupe makes a 37-yard field goal, they cover that spread. Although, to be fair, if Brian Brzee doesn't block a 40-yard field goal, then they don't cover spread. Whatever. Like, this should be a pick'em game, and I think by kickoff it will be. I think that line as Brock Purdy's status gets cemented out will gradually, like, no one's going to be betting on Mac Jones to go on the road and win a game. That said, that defense is scary. Like, one of my things is like, hey, I want to see the Saints open up the offense a bit. I don't want to see it this week. I want to see them play this game like they played the Broncos back when Kendall Hinton was the quarterback, right? Like, I want to see ground and pound. I'll win this game 9-6. I don't care. Because I think you can win the game like that. But like we talk about the injuries. The injuries are on offense. Like, that 49ers defense is still rip roaring like it always was.
Right.
And they're going to have, like, if there was a game where they were holding something back, they have some exotic blitzes and whatnot, like, you're getting it all. They're not going to keep anything in the back pocket for this game. They're going to take it all out and try to fluster Spencer Rattler. And if he throws a couple interceptions and turns the ball over like he didn't last week, if he takes a couple bad sacks and fumbles like he didn't last week, then that's the difference in this game. Like, the reason you stayed in that game against the Cardinals and you had a chance was you didn't turn the ball over. So we'll see. But that defense, I don't think the secondary is all that scary, but that front seven, I'm worried about it.
No, but we've been talking about with your backup quarterback in, there's no George Kittle. Two of your best players are not available right now. Lock in on stopping Christian McCaffrey, and I know that's probably easier said than done.
Yeah, it is and it isn't. I mean, it is when he's the only guy you have to worry about, and to me, he's the only guy you really have to worry about. Like, Ricky Pearsall's a good player. I'm not super concerned about him. Like, you're going to be able to cover him in the main. Like, who do you have to send help to is the question, right? And if there's only one guy, then you can handle that, right? Like, you can devote two people to one guy. Now, if there's two or three different players that you have to decide, well, who are we going to take away? Then that becomes really difficult. But I feel like, hey, we can play Ricky one-on-one. We can play MVS one-on-one. We can play Jawan Jennings one-on-one. We can play Kendrick Bourne one-on-one. We can just ignore Jake Tongas completely until he does something. Kyle Juszczyk is the player that I'm actually more worried about. But we'll have to see. Like, this is going to be the week that, Brandon Staley, obviously it's not Robert Saleh, or obviously Robert Saleh wasn't there last year, so it's a different scheme. But Brandon Staley knows these players. He knows what they like to do. He can give you some insight into how to attack them. So that should be helpful. Ike Adam as well. Like, he played against this team, this offense all last year in camp and practice. He knows what that offense wants to do. So I think this sets up for the Saints to win. Like, this is going to be a game. Like, last week the Saints lost, and I was happy with, hey, you took it down to the wire. You had a chance. I'm okay with it. Like, I'm disappointed, but I'm okay with it. If you don't win this game this week, that's going to be a major negative for me, because this is set up. This is tilted so heavily in your favor, even with the injuries you're dealing with. Like, you got to go win this game.
Yeah, it definitely feels like no Purdy, no Kittle. I hate the label of must win, but this is a should win game.
It's not a must win for the sake of your season. It's just, if your hope is to have a season where you win more games than you're expected, right? If you bet the over,
you got to have this
at 5.5. This is the type of game you have to win, right? Like, you're not going to get more favorable matchups than a team without its star wide receiver, star tight end, and star quarterback. It's just not going to happen for you. So go win it. You're at home. Like, go win the game. But yeah. Anyway, I think I think he kind of gave us the vibe there, and it's not a vibe of confidence for that group.
No, they're dealing. You said this could be very well a field goal game, and who knows what you're going to get from Pinheiro just coming off the street.
Yeah, it reminds me when the Saints were trying to replace Will Lutz that year, and they went through all these kickers, and it was like, remember Aldrich Rosas, and they had Jake Elliott. No, not Jake Elliott. It's going to bother me. Cody Parkey. They had Cody Parkey for one game. He missed like 2 extra points against the Commanders. Gone. He actually hurt himself in warmups for that game. They had some guy named like Brian Johnson. Brett Maher was there. Like, it feels like
Maher. I remember him.
That's the type of year you might be in if things don't go a certain way for you. Like, if Eddie Pinheiro comes out and struggles, suddenly you're on your back. So that's never where you want to be, especially when you're in a situation where you're going to need to take advantage of every 3-point opportunity with an offense that just doesn't have the horses. So
it's just wild too. We mentioned a little bit about Thomas Morstead, still active, man. The only person from that Super Bowl squad that's still around.
Yeah. And he's their weapon. No, I mean, like, I'm talking down the 49ers. Like, they could easily just come in here and shut the Saints out like they did in that game a few years back. But, I also feel pretty confident that the Saints could walk in there on Sunday and shut them out. So we'll have to see how it goes. But either way, this is Inside Black and Gold. I'm Jeff Nowak. He's Steve Geller. Thanks again to Evan Giddings for coming on. We're going to hit a quick break and then come back, go through our X factors on offense and defense. Who could swing the matchup? It's a 3.5-point underdog instead of a 7.5-point underdog. So, hey, you can find 3 points somewhere in the X factors, right? Who dat? Go Saints. We'll be right back. And we're back on Inside Black and Gold. I'm Jeff Nowak. He is Steve Geller. We are previewing week 2, Saints hosting the 49ers, back-to-back home games to start the season. You're going to see Spencer Rattler at quarterback again. We're going to have some injury questions. We're recording this prior to the Friday injury report. True. So, if some guys get out there to practice and get in the game, we don't know. Tough to say at this point the status of guys like Chase Young and Taliese Fuaga and whatever. But there's going to be a lot of question marks. So let's start on offense for you. And again, it's tough because we don't know if Fuaga is going to play or not. I would bet no, but we'll have to wait and see how they handle it. Who is your X factor on offense? Who do you think is the guy you're leaning on to swing this?
Well, the San Fran's without their star tight end, and I'm hoping our star tight end, I guess you'll say star since he's your main guy, looking for a Juwan Johnson redemption game. And just because of that, the last play for him, the rest of the game, we've talked about that. He had a pretty significant day against Arizona, just an unfortunate situation at the end. I'm happy that a lot of folks have at least started to realize what a difficult catch that would have been in the end zone because of the Arizona defense. Credit to them as well. But I think, you're going to be relying on him as that security blanket for Spencer in this one and hoping that maybe he can rise above and make that hard catch this game that'll maybe turn some of those angry Houdats back into Juwan's favor.
Yeah, I appreciate that, random Cardinals account that tweeted the video from I think it was the mic'd up package, because that's the best look you're going to get at it. And you can really see, not only, so Budda Baker dislodges it, and Dalen Thompson, he just digs that thing out. He saved the game for them. Because I think if it's just Budda, he kind of dislodges it a little bit, but Juwan, he re-secures it. It's only an incompletion because Jalen reached in. And so that's kind of what I was saying after the game. Whether you think he should have caught it or not, calling it a drop and saying everyone should make this catch. No, I think Brett Martell from the AP, he was asking Spencer about it yesterday, and he had a good line.
That, right.
Which was for fans that don't appreciate, how difficult it is to catch a ball while you're getting hit by a car. And I thought that was, anyway. So that's kind of where I was after the game is if Juwan can come out again and be the 8-catch, 70-yard receiver that he was in that game, that's what I need. And that's what I'm expecting. I am expecting for him to be kind of that security blanket over the middle of the field. So I'm not going to have him be my X factor because that's what I expect him to do. He got paid. He needs to be a consistent week in, week out performer. And he understands that. So I do expect, Spencer to go to him early and often, and I expect him to deliver. And that's where if I get disappointed in Juwan, if I'm going to come out and be negative about Juwan, it's going to be that he doesn't deliver in those moments, not that he doesn't make the top play on SportsCenter.
Yeah, you can't have a 2-catch, 14-yard game on Sunday.
Right. If you're going to be drawing 10, 11 targets, I need you to catch 7 or 8 of those passes. That's where Juwan is earning that money. And that's kind of what my point was all along, because I think he did in that game. Let's see if he can keep it going. But my X factor on offense has got to be the run game, right? I think you got away from it too early in this game because you were behind. You had all the penalties. The Saints did have refs out at practice this week to, they're focusing on it. You don't get 13 penalties and just be we'll sort it out. I'm not worried. No, you got to fix that. That costs you games. So, no, I mean, you got to be cleaner there. And one of the reasons you got away from the run game and Spencer ended up throwing 46 passes is you were behind the chains constantly. You were in 1st and 15, 2nd and 15. You're not going to be able to run the ball effectively in those scenarios, or at least not confidently when you're also behind on the scoreboard and you got to make up a gap. So, no, I think you got to lean on the run game here because, like I said, they're going to try to punch it out. You got to be secure with the ball. But this game, if for the 49ers to win this game, they're going to need you to gift wrap them a turnover somewhere. Because I fully expect the Saints defense to go out there and shut down Mac Jones. They've done it before. I expect them to do it again. But if you give him short fields and you allow, them to kick field goals and force you to play from behind on the scoreboard and get aggressive and then give their defense opportunities, that's where you get into trouble. So I need them to run the ball. I need Alvin Kamara to be effective, and not just Alvin Kamara. I need it to be Alvin, Kendre, and if you need him, Devin Neal, right? No, I wouldn't mind a Bayless Jones trick play in there somewhere. He didn't really get on the field in week 1. But they did try the the trick play we actually saw in practice. They ran it in practice where they split out the tackle when it was going to be kind of a screen, like almost like a snowplow kind of screen out to the edge of the field. And they ended up calling a false start on that play. So they showed it for no reason. They put it on tape for just so the 49ers could be aware of it. So I don't think you go back there. I think you give that a few weeks to ride before you pull that out of your pocket again. But there's going to be some opportunities for these speedsters. But you got to make hay on the ground. Like that's my point. Is you have to establish the run in this game, because if you don't, that like Nick Bosa is not a guy you want to be dropping back and allowing to rush the passer constantly. You can't do it, especially if Fuaga's not out there and you're talking about Austin Richards on the right side. That's not a scenario you want to be messing around with. So that's, to me, that's it, is can you run the ball? Because if you can, even at like I don't even need 4. If you can run the ball at like a high 3 clip, I think you can win this game. If you can't, if you're looking at around 2.5 yards a carry and you're putting way too much of the stress on Spencer in the passing game, then I don't think you do win. So that's to me, that's it.
Can Awesome be awesome if he's out there? I mean, I'm definitely concerned about the Fuaga stuff.
I've had Everything Is Awesome stuck in my head for like 2 weeks.
Nice.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Lego movie. It's a classic.
Everything is awesome.
Highly underrated film for me. I love that movie, watching it with my kiddo all the time. And it was one of those, every time we saw it, it got funnier for me.
It's a good one. The sequels kind of lost me a little bit, but
yeah, right.
There's stuff about it. We don't need to talk about the Lego movie in this podcast, but we already did, so I'll leave it in.
We got sidetracked yesterday on Sports Talk talking about architecture with the new board op, so it happens sometimes.
Cool.
Right.
Great. Let's do it. All right, now let's switch over to the defense. You know, the group that, again, you know, you're talking about a Chase Young. Will he be out there? Will he not be out there? You're without Julian Blackmon. Jonas Sanker is going to be that guy taking over, which I was honestly surprised Kellen just came out. I wasn't even asking him directly who the replacement was going to be. I was kind of like, do you guys already know? And I expected him to be like, yeah, we know. We're just not telling you. But instead he was like, yeah, we have great confidence in Jonas. And cool. Thank you. I appreciate that. That makes my life easier, not having to guess. But he's going to take over. And I think that's going to be a factor of like, they're going to attack him. You put a rookie out there, second career game, he's getting attacked.
Right.
And it's going to be your job to defend him. But, you know, who is your X factor? Like, what are you looking at? Like, what do you need to see from this defense for them to kind of key a win like I think they can?
Stack the box and do whatever you have to do in coverage to have someone on Christian McCaffrey. Just don't let him be the guy that beats you. And I feel like in previous matchups, dating back even to the Carolina Panthers, they've done a decent job in the run game against McCaffrey, but those receiving yards have always been killer.
Yeah, I think in this game, it's like, okay, Christian McCaffrey is Christian McCaffrey. And I think he is a little limited from that calf injury. Like, I don't know exactly what percentage you'd put him at. I wouldn't put him at 100, but he can still do things that is incredibly difficult to defend. The difference in this game compared to other games is if he beats you and if you're having to deal with Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle and all these guys and he beats you, it's because you just can't devote enough attention to him. That's one thing.
Yeah.
If he beats you in this game, it is squarely on the game planning and Brandon Staley and not doing enough because, you know, the Bill Belichick, it's like, hey, I'm going to take away what you want to do and you can beat me with whoever else you have, but I'm taking that away. And that has to be the game plan, right? Like, you cannot walk into this game and do anything but say, hey, we're going to have 2 people on Christian McCaffrey at all times. If Ricky Pearsall is eating us up and Jawan Jennings is eating us up and we have to adjust, fine. But I'm going to force them to prove to me that that's possible before I allow Christian to do anything. I'm bracketing him out of the backfield on every play. I'm taking away the quick. I'm taking away the flat, right? Like, I'm taking away the screen game. I thought the Saints handled the screen game against the Cardinals as well as I've seen them handle the screen game in years. They need to do that again. They're going to be wanting to throw the ball quick, getting it short of the sticks. You're going to have to go up and make tackles. But again, if that's Jawan Jennings, okay, good job, kid. If that's Ricky Pearsall, okay, good job, kid. If that's Christian McCaffrey, it's like, Brandon, what the hell are you doing? You know, that's how I look at it.
Yeah, I'm definitely hoping that Staley's intimate knowledge of this offense will help the Saints in the end here. And he has to know, you know, the strengths, weaknesses, and what works and doesn't against them.
Yeah, and so my X factor, you took Christian McCaffrey, and I want to at least bring up another point here because I agree that is the biggest X factor, but I'll give you one more in that I need the Saints on the back end to be solid. Now, I trust Jonas Sanker to come up and hit. That's his game. He reminds me of I'm going to try to talk to him in the locker room and see if he agrees with me on this at some point. I'm hoping to get him for an interview for the pregame show if he shows his face. Like, we didn't see him yesterday, so we didn't get a chance. But the guy he reminds me of in the NFL is Landon Collins. And I know most people from New Orleans don't claim Landon Collins anymore because he went to Alabama. And I think his mom even was like pissed off at him for going to Alabama. Yeah. But like, that's who Jonas reminds me of. And the book on Landon Collins was, if you let him get down to the box and be a thumper, he's going to eat your lunch, right? If you can get him in coverage, if you can isolate him in coverage, you can get him, and he's not as fleet of foot. And, if you get on top of him, he's not making up that ground. And Jonas is similar. Like, we haven't really seen him have to cover, but, I think if you're the Saints, you're going to try to avoid situation where he's isolated in coverage. And if the 49ers get things done on offense, it's probably going to be because they attack that and they win that, or the Saints drop a coverage. That's one thing, like, you're going to have to communicate. And that's my biggest question with a rookie on the back end is he communicating at a high level? I think one of the benefits you have is this is a home game and the crowd noise should benefit you. Although when the Saints are on defense, that crowd gets loud. So, maybe you don't go like this to the crowd as much because I need Jonas to hear those calls. And that's going to be the thing. If you drop coverages, Mac Jones, he can still get it out there. Like, they're going to take a couple shot plays. They're going to attack. They're going to try it. And you got to hold up. So I would expect the Saints to kind of sit back and maybe in a little bit of shell early on, see what happens and see what the 49ers game plan is. But to me, that's an X factor is if the 49ers can take advantage of that rookie safety out there and just make his life miserable, then this game could go their way because it's like one big play. It's not going to be a high-scoring game. And maybe it is. Maybe I'm sitting here and saying it's going to be a 13-12 game, and it ends up somehow being like 25-30. But if you drop a coverage and you allow one 60-yard touchdown because somebody gets messed up with a rookie in there, that can and probably will be the difference in the game.
MVS revenge game.
Yeah, right. And they have MVS out there. Like, he's going to go deep. He's going to be tough to manage. He's big. He's 6'4". Right? Yeah. Like, that's something they have that you're going to have to deal with, and you can't allow them to have one of those. We saw, like, when the Saints were struggling on offense and they didn't have the weapons. How did they stay in games? How were they competitive against the Rams? They had two big plays to play, MVS. Right? Or the Falcons game was when they had two long touchdowns to MVS. The Rams game, they had a touchdown to MVS. Like, he went over the top and they hit him. Now, I don't know if Michael McCorkle-Jones is able to throw that deep ball quite as well as some of these other guys out there. Do you know that? Do you know his middle name is? Do you know Mac comes from McCorkle?
Yeah, everyone's definitely been ripping on him Saints fans at least, and Saints reporters ripping on Mac coming into this week now that we know that he's going to be the QB.
If you go out there and lose to Michael McCorkle-Jones, just pack it in.
Well, you brought up last segment. It's like they owned him when they did face off against him back in the day with the Patriots. Hopefully that can translate into Sunday as well.
Yeah, it's a different defense.
Yeah.
But I feel like, I don't know, like, I think you see that sometimes with quarterbacks. Like, there's certain teams that just seem to have your number regardless of what the defensive scheme is or who's out there. And I don't know. I feel pretty confident that that's the case with the Saints.
You've brought it up before about just hearing Brandon Staley talk, and it is like you feel like you're just gaining knowledge listening to what he's talking about. And I don't know. I just have confidence in the guy in the game he's going to call.
I do too. And it will be helpful if Chase is out there. That's been the frustration of the first 2 weeks is like, man, like this defense, I was expecting to look a very specific way. And a big part of that was Chase Young, I think, is going to have a monster season whenever he gets on the dang field. It's just a question of whether that's the case. And hopefully maybe that's this week. Again, we haven't gotten to Friday. We haven't gotten the Friday injury report to know for sure, but I think
the players seem happier too. So whatever that's worth.
Yeah. I will give you one more, and it's not really an X factor, more so like needs to lock in, and it's Blake Grupe. He did talk about the miss. And one thing he said that I thought was interesting is, so it came right after the Rashid Shaheed play that should have been pass interference. It was pass interference.
Yeah.
They didn't call it, so it wasn't pass interference. But if that's not pass interference, then I don't know what pass interference is. I think even the refs would look at that after the game and be like, we missed one. And then the Saints were all flustered about it, and so the operation on the kick was rushed. And that's what he said. And he was like, if I had to do it over again, I'm taking the delay game penalty rather than rushing that kick. Because that's what he was like. Yeah, I mean, I rushed it. I missed it. Like, he put it on himself. There was nothing wrong with the operation. He just pulled it. And, I think that's just kind of a learning moment for him. And it would be a kind of a ballsy move for a kicker to be like, nope, I'm not rushing this. I'm taking that 5 yards. But he probably makes it if he takes that and kind of settles in and takes a breath. So I say that to all that is to say, like, I'm not worried about Blake Grupe, but you're going to need Blake in this game.
No doubt.
And like last week, it cost you something, but I don't think it cost you the game.
It cost bettors.
It did. It cost people some money if you had that on the Saints. But I do think that, the Blake Grupe we saw in camp, like when is that going to be the biggest value to you? It's going to be in a game like this, where you get past the 40. You have to be putting 3 on the board every time, because I don't know how often you're going to get past the 40. And
right.
So he, the 50+ yard kicks have been an area that he has been rock solid his whole career. And so those are going to be the kicks today, like on Sunday, that if you can knock through a couple 50+ yarders and give yourself that. The last time the Saints faced Mac McCorkle-Jones, he knocked through 2 50-yarders and was the special teams player of the week in that 35-0 beatdown.
Nice.
So, like those are going to be the play. Like if I'm the 49ers and I'm like, we're here. Are we trusting Eddie Pinheiro in this situation? I don't know. Like, I still trust, like, again, all this is to say, I trust Blake Grupe. Like, I am not overreacting to that one miss on a situation that, I think he explained it pretty well. And I believe him when he says that. I'm going to him. I'm not going to be hyper aggressive in situations where I have a field goal programmed in. I'm kicking it.
Also, this game, Jeff, need the fans to be rabid, with this backup quarterback and McCorkle at QB here. Limited weapons right now, dealing with, the wide receiver issues, tight end not around. I want this team to the fans just come out and unleash in the Dome on Sunday. I thought last week was a good showing. There was a loud and proud in there, but they got to take it even to a next level this game. Agreed. And I'm not trying to make fun of Mac. It's just probably a family name. I don't know. You gotta have fun with something. I never knew that that was where Mac came from. I thought his name was Mac. Like, oh no, it's not. Anyway, so let's do it. But that's it for me. You got anything else you want to hit before we move out of here? No, man. Just hoping that we can get into the win column here, because we've talked about this a lot too. I thought they would split week 1, and I thought week 1 and 2, and I thought it was going to be opposite. They'd win the Arizona game and lose to San Fran. Well, hopefully they can pick this one up. It's prime for the picking right now, because after this, it's not a very favorable 2-game road stretch you have. Right, and that's the thing. Like, as nice as I think it was for the Saints to start the season with some confidence and play a tight game, if you don't win this game, you're staring 0-4 in the face. Like, you could go out to Seattle and potentially win that game. I don't think they're a dominant team. They lost to this 49ers team last week. Yeah. 17 to what? 14 or 13? 17 to 13. Yeah. Yeah. And they had a chance. Like, they were driving at the end of the game. Nick Bosa forced a fumble. But like, I don't trust my odds to go out to Seattle and win a game. I don't trust my odds at all to go out to Buffalo and win a game. And you're staring, if you don't find a way to win this game, you're staring 0-4 in the face. And, then the 0-16 conversation starts. And you just don't want to be in that. Hear that noise. I don't think it's going to happen. I'm 0-16. We're operating in the past 0-17. And like, I'm not saying I think the Saints are going to go 0-17, but when you're 0-4 in your first 4 games, when are they going to win? And people are talking about you as the worst team in the NFL. Those are the conversations that are going to start to being had. And I don't want to be in those conversations. So let's just get it out of the way early. How about that? 1-16 is fine to me. I don't know. It's looking more and more, at least the vibe that you're feeling from the national media, maybe the fact that come week 5, it's probably going to be Jackson Dart at QB. Man, people have been ripping Russell Wilson. Oh, for the Giants. Yeah, for the G-men come to town.
he looked terrible. Like, one of the reasons I felt like Spencer Rattler came out of that game, I was like, okay, because when I went back and watched the Giants game, I was like, this is like a 36-year-old veteran quarterback, and he looks like he's completely out of touch. Like,
yeah,
he looks
folks
like he
are
has no
saying
chance.
just put Jameson if he's going to look that terrible.
Right, and they have Malik Neighbors and like they have players, and he just looks completely useless out there. So, like, one team hasn't scored a touchdown in week 1 of the last 3 years. You sent me this. It's the Giants. You know, like, even the Saints got a touchdown. This is supposed to be the worst offense that's ever happened to the NFL. The Saints found a way to get a touchdown. Anyway.
Yeah, and boo to Pete Prisco of CBS Sports putting out his power rankings and having Saints as team number 32 in the NFL. How can you say that after what you saw week 1 from teams like for me, Miami Dolphins are bottom of the barrel right now.
Right. Even Florio has the Saints like 30th, which is probably fair.
I'm okay in that range, but you're not the worst team. This is not the worst team in the NFL. I'll still keep banging the desk on that one.
Prisco's always hated the Saints, and
I've
always hated him, so it's fair. You know?
It's mutual.
Yeah. Anyway, who dat? Go Saints. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. We will be back on Sunday for the pregame show starting at 8 a.m. from the Caesars Superdome. Catch it on WWL AM 870 FM 105.3 and on the Odyssey app. You can follow myself at Jeff Nowak. Follow Steve at Steve Geller WWL. You can follow the show at Saints_pod. That's POD. And check out WWL.com for the latest news, notes, and analysis. Who dat? Go Saints.
Who dat? Contain Christian.
Peace.